This is a Flutter BLoC tutorial. The BLoC is not needed to use Flame to build Flutter games. However, we're using it to learn about BLoC. So this isn't the easiest way. I just want to show you where we're at quickly in case you're joining us. There, of course, is a previous video, Pinkie, and Pinkie is this pink man. And I'm just moving it to show that Pinkie is a sprite component and the background here is a static image right now. Again, this is a BLoC tutorial for state management. And I'm using VS Code, which I recommend that you use, because I'm about to use some of these extensions on VS Code to make it easier to manage the BLoC. So there's this extension called BLoC, which has 242,000 downloads and 5 out of 5 stars. It's by Felix Angelo. So go ahead and install this BLoC extension if you don't already have it installed. Okay. We're also going to use Equitable, and we're going to use a Dart data class generator. So on VS Code, search for Dart data class generator. There might be several. I'm using the one from HZGood here. So this video I'm using Android, and in the previous video I installed a number of packages. So I installed Equitable, Flame, BLoC, FlameBlock, and Flutter BLoC. In reality, you just need FlameBlock, but because we're importing in some of the code, we'll be importing BLoC directly or Flame directly. To get the auto import working, I've imported these things directly. However, they're dependent, right? So Flutter BLoC is a dependency of FlameBlock. So theoretically, you would just need to import FlameBlock and Equitable. I'm doing this to get the auto import to work correctly. And in the pubspec.yaml, I have my assets here. And we do have some assets from PixelFrog. Let's get started with the BLoC. First, let's go into main.dart, just because you might be on a different Android emulator or you might be on iOS. So make sure that we have at the top here, I've set to these 3 lines, landscape and full screen. This was done in the previous video. So I'm going into the Flame Layer, Pinkie game. There's this onload method here. I'm going to lock the viewport to a specific size. So I'm going to set it to fixed resolution viewport. And in Flame, the sizing is done with a set of vectors. So I'll do 784. You can adjust this size to whatever is good for your device. So I'm setting a specific device here, a specific size, so that it can run it either on Android, and it should look the same, or on the Linux desktop. Right now on the Android emulator, it looks like this with this scaling. This character is 100 by 100 pixels. So I have a folder blocks and it's completely empty. Let's collapse these so you can see it. So I haven't created the blocks yet. I'm going to right click on it. And because I have the extensions installed, I'm going to click here for new block. And I'm going to put the name of the block in here. So I'm going to call this one, I'll call it, let's call it treasure, or maybe I'll call it score. So I put it in, and now there's these 3 files. it's automatically generated this subfolder called BLoC here. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to rename it to score. So if you have multiple blocks, it's easier to arrange it this way if you call the subfolder the same name as the block itself. So I have these 3 files now. You can inspect it. These files were automatically inserted by the VS Code extension. So now we're going to go into the state. For the state, I'm going to delete the word abstract that was automatically inserted in the const constructor. I'm going to put these 2 curly brackets, and I'm going to insert an integer. I'll just call it score. I'm going to do control dot, and there's a bunch of things that pop open. Okay, so if you can also click on the light bulb, and the same menu will open up here. I'm going to select this one called generate constructor. Although the constructor is already there, it inserts this line here, require this dot score, which is this final variable here. So this is the constructor, this is the class, this is the constructor, this is the property. Right now we have this, I'm going to delete that. The props is currently empty. I'm going to click on the score again, and I'll do control dot. I'm going to select generate copy with. It automatically inserted this portion here. I'm going to do control dot again. I'm going to insert the toString, which it did this. Click on control dot. I'm going to select generate equitable. The generate equitable, it inserted this score here into the properties list. Delete the first 2 lines. I'm not going to create a factory constructor. I'm going to call it initial. This is a name that I'm choosing for it. And we'll set the initial value for the score, which I will set at 0. And there's a little blue reminder here that it should be a const. So I did control dot again, and I'm going to select the quick fix to put a const there. So there's no red squiggly lines in the state file. And I did the toString, the copy with, this is the equitable from the extension. And I manually created this factory constructor for the initial state of the score to set it at 0. But the block now is red. And the reason the block is red is because we replace the initial constructor. There's no score initial, we just deleted it. Instead we replaced it with score state.initial. So I'll just change the name. Score state dot. Now we have score state.initial. And the way the block works is that there's a set of events. So if you go to the event file, there's this class here. We're going to extend it. The convention is to use some type of adjective or action word, and then so I'm picking increase, and then I'm going to score event. Okay, it's very simple. I'm not passing it any properties or parameters for the event, so it just extends this score event here for the purpose of our education for the tutorial. And I'm done with my event file. I'm going to the block. So remember the name is increase score event. So I'll do increase score event, and on the block, right? So I have access to the state as well. So at this point, I can emit an event onto the stream. But because I did the copy with, it's a little bit easier. This is the key line. There's a lot that's happening here. If you're unfamiliar with BLoC, this might be a bit difficult, but it's a good practice. The application is short, right? So you can just maybe repeat it if you don't understand it. You have to emit an event to the stream. So this is the name of the event that I just created right there. Increase score event. So I created it, right? I created the event. And so when you add the event to the stream in Flutter or Flame, it's going to go right here. It's going to find this thing, and you can now emit something to the stream. So the thing we're going to emit is the new state. So state that copy with, we just added it into the state here. Boom. And we have the state, you can access it. So this state score parameter is here, right? And then we're adding 1. So when we call this event, we can now use it. Okay, if you're new to BLoC, it may be a bit confusing, and so you may want to repeat this tutorial, this video, and the previous video a couple of times until it becomes more familiar. So I'm back in main.dart. We have to provide the block. I think what I'm going to do to keep it shorter, or I'm going to actually just put a single block in here. So I right-clicked on it. I'm going to select wrap with block provider. If you have more than one block, you have to use a multi-block. But I'm going to select wrap with block provider. So we're just doing one block in this tutorial. And there's the name of the block, which we just created, which we call it score. Right? And it's still red because we haven't imported it. So I do control dot. Then I'm going to select this one here. This is, we created it, right? So this is the file that we just created with VS Code. So I import the block, and it's still red because this block provider here oh, I see the problem. Need to specify the score block. Okay, so it's not red. I forgot to specify the name of the block right there after block provider, and it's in this package Flutter BLoC. So at this point, it's looking pretty similar to provider, which is another great package for state management. This tutorial again focuses on the block, and we're now providing the block down the tree. So let's access it here. So in order to access it, we have to put it within a builder so this thing will rebuild. So I'm going to click on the row within Flutter Layer.dart. I'm going to click on the light bulb so it's easier to see. And I am going to select wrap with block builder. Boom. It requires the name. So notice it automatically inserted score block and score state for me here. I just did control dot. First thing I'm going to import this package here right at the top. And now this is no longer red because I've imported Flutter BLoC. And Flutter BLoC you can use without Flame on your Flutter projects, and the purpose of this tutorial is to learn how to use BLoC. So I just imported here my score block, and the score block is part of state, right? So I have access to the score block and the state, and the state is right there. So I can type in the state. I'll do $sign for string interpolation of variables, and I'll go state. The state is from right there. It's being supplied to me from the score state, and I have the score. Okay, so now I have the score here. I want to make this interactive, but just to illustrate what's going on. So when I initialize the state here for score, let's say if I set it to, let's say 5, and if I were to reload it, the score is 5. So this variable is locked to the Flutter widget here. It's going to initialize it. Okay, I'm going to set it back to 0. And we want to set up a linkage between Flame and the Flutter Layer. But maybe to quickly show you the interactivity, I will go to Flutter and I'll add a text button just to illustrate how the interactivity works here. So we'll go the text button on pressed. Just get a button going on here. We'll maybe plus score. Okay, so all I did was add a text button right there. And now we have this little text button. You can of course apply the styling directly in here. But something you might forget what you set the styling to on a specific button. So another technique, it's not necessary, is to adjust the theme for the button. So I have this theme data and I already have my text theme. So below that, I'm going to put my text button theme for all my text buttons. So I'll go with text button, theme data, and I'll set the style of my text, all my text buttons. Text button, style from, and I'll select the foreground color. I'll put it to colors.orange as the first property here. And now my button is orange, but it's a little small. Let's see, where is it? Foreground color. So I'll put the text style for the text button. Okay, I just needed to hot restart it. And it's here, but you can't, it doesn't really look like a button, so I'm going to apply a background color to it. Background color, maybe, no, just put it to gray here. And it doesn't look very good. It looks okay. I'm just going to leave it for the purpose of this. because we just want to focus on the button. So I'm in the Flutter layer. This is my button right here. So I'm going to do this similar to probably what you would do with provider. Context.read, and then I use these angle brackets here. And inside the angle brackets, just put the name of the block. So if you remember what it was, it's score block. And then at the end of the round, so there's angle brackets, right? Score block, and then there's these round parentheses for the read method. I'm going to add, and then we have to add the event to the string. Remember what the name of the event was that we created? Remember, it's in this file here. What's the name of the event, right? It's increase score event. So we're going to drop that name of the event in here. Increase score event. So syntax is context.read, similar to provider. You have the name of the block, which is different. Then it's .add increase score event. So now we have a button that is going to add this increased score event to the stream. And you can see it here that we're controlling this Flutter button. Boom. So congratulations, you've learned about BLoC. It's a bit confusing. Potentially, I mean, it could be a lot to take in. There's a lot of concepts here. And BLoC is not needed, again, to use Flame. We're going through the tutorial so you know how to use BLoC, which is a state management for Flutter. And in the next video, we're going to connect the Flame layer using FlameBlock. So up until this stage in the tutorial, we've only used Flutter BLoC. The next video, we're going to use FlameBlock to control the score based on movements within the FlameGame system. So we're going to make Pinkie move and hit a jewel, these beautiful jewels from Frog Pixel, and when it hits, we will increment the score. So just to give you a little preview, so the guy's moving. You can see when it hits the jewel, the Flutter layer here is going to be incremented. So he hits a jewel, Flutter layer is incremented. And in this case, when you hit five jewels, the level is going to increase, which is going to shift the entire thing. But in the next video, we'll just cover like hitting one jewel and then linking it to the Flutter layer. So maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to get this type of videos in the future, and have a fantastic day.